Sorry about that. Okay. For about a week, life continued peacefully as it always did, and the nymphs decided they could no longer tolerate being controlled. The relationship they had with their riders was fast dissolving. In a massive upheaval, the nymphs turned against the riders and cocooned them in sticky webs that were impossible to break. The nymphs decided to live amongst themselves without the support or help of the Veritas. Some nymphs had no homes to return to and eventually began dying, or fighting among themselves. Jewel was the one nymph that hadn't been fitted with a crescent, so she was readily accepting of Vega's commands. Vega was horrified at the chaos she had caused and asked for the one nymph whisperer to set everything right again. Amistad, you have seen the melee that has occurred because of my folly. I don't mean to impose upon you, but the Veritas have no mean of exiting their homes, and neither do we. If we don't find help soon, I fear all of us will die. You're the only one that can save us. I'm counting on you. I know you won't let us down, the Duchess said before she gave Amistad his last kiss. Right after Amistad had flown out of the castle, the nymphs barricaded it off from the rest of the world in cocoons. Amistad cringed when he looked back. She has so much faith in me. I hope I can find the right person to help me out of this crisis and bring back balance to Veritas, Amistad mused to himself as he put a spell upon him to breathe air outside the planet. The spell was inexhaustible, so he had nothing to fear, while he caused Jewel to rise and leave Veritas behind. As he did, he shed quiet tears and looked amongst the stars for a sign of the planet with vibrancy and prayerfully hope. Chapter 4. Meeting Charlene. After traveling a considerable distance, Amistad came upon a relatively medium-sized planet brimming with life, which he would soon come to know as Earth. From there, he would soon learn was called North America, and the state where he landed was known as Oklahoma. Everything in this Earth had to offer was fascinating to him, much different than Veritas. For one thing, the insects they had there were far smaller, and most of them seemed to be an annoyance to humans, which he found quite heartbreaking. After landing not too far away from a farm, Amistad kissed Jewel's head and let her know that he would be back. She would be safe in the cornfield. If she wished to eat, she would have plenty of foliage to snack on. Jewel understood, beginning to nibble on the stalks nearby. Girding up his courage, Amistad snuck toward the barn and knocked on the door. It was late at night, so he wasn't certain if anyone would answer the door. A human female came to the door and was surprised at what she saw. "You're an alien, aren't you?" the female inquired. Amistad was surprised. This human was aware he wasn't a common earthling, but it was quite obvious from his field appearance that he wasn't human. "Yes, but that's not important. I am Amistad, and I need your help," Amistad said, keeping his composure. He felt a bit weak from all that flying around. The gravity of Earth had gotten to him. The young girl, Charlene Sylvestre, propped him up under her arm and let him in. Fortunately, her parents were asleep, or they would have called the special forces to have them look after the stranger she had brought in. "I'm Charlene, Amistad. Hope you like my humble home. It's not much, but I quite like it. So, why have you come here to Earth?" Charlene asked as she gave Amistad a cup of green tea with honey and some sugar cookies. Amistad had never had green tea or cookies before, but he immediately liked the strong nature of the tea and the sweetness of the sugar cookies. He hoped he could learn how to cultivate tea for himself back on Veritas and learn the ingredients to make cookies so they would be hopefully mass-produced. After taking a long sip of green tea and finishing his cookie, Amistad went into the sordid tale of what had happened on his home planet. "You were the first human I came in contact, and I thought, from sensing your kind aura, that we would be able to help calm the nymphs down," Amistad confessed. Charlene had no clue what a nymph was, but she was about to meet one up close and personal. Upon meeting Jewel for the first time, Jewel showed no sense of dread or disgust. "She's like a mammoth Katie did," Charlene said, chuckling as Jewel's feeders nuzzled her head and neck. I've never seen her take to a stranger so quickly, especially an extraterrestrial like yourself," Amistad agreed with a chortle. He had never heard a human laugh before, but now he liked the sound of it. "How will I survive the trip to your planet? Is there something you can do to make my parents less worried about me?" Charlene asked. Amistad had already taken care of the matter by creating a clone of herself that would remain until she returned. The clone didn't even rouse from sleep at them leaving the house or closing the door. "So how does this clone know everything I do?" she said, noticing the version of herself was fast asleep at her desk. "That's simple, Charlene. Just by tactile contact. I gathered all the information I would need before I cast a spell to create her. Now, as considering your second inquiry, I will put an oxygen shield around us," Amistad explained. "That's sensational. Never did I think magic was real, but now I know at least in some other universe it is. That gives me hope," Charlene said, taking the feline's paw and hoisting her on the back of Jewel. You better hold on to me, Charlene. It'll be a long flight to Veritas, so don't let go. The universe is a cold, unforgiving place," Amistad warned. Charlene knew that Amistad was absolutely right. She had studied planetary systems and the mechanisms of the universe in her astronomy and physics classes, and completely understood what Amistad was referring to. Holding on tightly around his midsection, Amistad flicked the reins softly against Jewel, and she immediately hovered off the ground. The feeling that rose in Charlene's heart was one of excitement and eagerness. This had been the first time she had flown, especially on a mammoth katydid of all things. She had never felt so free before, but she would soon learn that the gravity of her title as chosen savior to calm the nymphs. That innocent confidence would be grasped in a stranglehold as soon as the two landed on Veritas. Chapter 5. Peace upon the Seas of Nymphs. When Amistad and Charlene returned to Veritas, chaos had ensued. Everything was blanketed in cocoons, and the nymphs and Veritas people were beginning to starve to death. Seeing that the nymphs had begun to fight, she walked steadily among them and begged them to stop quarreling amongst each other. As much as she raised her voice, she couldn't convince them to settle down. Many of them were dying away, evaporating into the atmosphere. It was enough to make Charlene cry, but she held back her tears. It was a time that she knew she had to be tough and rely on her courageous heart. Taking broad, confident steps, Charlene raised her hands up to the nymphs and one by one placed her hands upon their heads. They had been gnawing and tearing at each other, some of them dead at the hands of their brothers and sisters. Those who were still left stopped fighting immediately and returned to their normal duties. "I feel so exhausted," Charlene said, beginning to faint. Having seen Charlene begin to take a fall to the ground, he rushed toward her and cradled her from hitting the ground, even if it was grassy and soft. Amistad realized he had just seen a miracle occur when he thought such a thing was impossible, but he should have known, having been a magic user himself. The life of Veritas was one of miracles. He patted her face lightly to rouse her. "Are you going to be all right?" he asked. "Yes. And it looks as if your nymphs, as you call them, will also be back to their usual duties," Charlene said, as Amistad helped her back to her feet. Around them, the cocoons that the nymphs had made were dissolving. Thankfully, only a few nymphs had died in the occurrence, and no Veritas had suffered the slings and arrows of death. After the initial calm, there was a triumphant sound of chauffeur horns. After the initial calm, there was a triumphant sound of chauffeur horns. That doesn't make any sense. After the initial calm, a triumphant sound of chauffeur horns resounded from the castle. The Duchess ran to meet her hero of the hour and showered him with kisses. "So this is the Duchess you told me about. I can see why you love her," Charlene observed. Not too long after Vega had arrived to reward her hero, Cerisa had come out of hiding to apologize. At first, the other Veritas were angered at her, but she had apologized for not testing her crescent before mass-producing it for the nymphs. The Veritas forgave her and commended her to return to scientific study, which she did after bowing in deference to them.